joined by Kieran Geoghegan, an independent IFS service consultant from Sorcha Systems. Hopefully, be able to pick up a lot of interesting things today. Learn about service. Welcome, Kieran. How are you?
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Rob. Very happy to be here.
Yes, finally. I know you've been watching some of the other episodes, and yeah, super glad that you're here. I know that you're a very busy man, and you're always in the thick of things with service implementation. So yeah, man, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed the other episodes. So good that we could finally let our diaries align and get into this.
Absolutely. So, like, just to kick it off, right? Like, so why do you think the IFS service module in particular is important? Like, like against all the others?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's my area of expertise. I've been working in IFS service and maintenance, and I'll probably differentiate between the two a little bit later. But I've been doing this for 10 years, and in that time, IFS has grown from what was a service and maintenance module that, despite quite different use cases, had pretty similar functionality in some of the older versions to what is now really in many ways a best of breed service product. I know that IFS has put a lot of investment, a lot of time in R&D into making that happen. But yeah, I think it's important because that's the way the world's going, right? Obviously we're still manufacturing, we're fixing, but that customer-centric service model, service contracts, we will look after this asset over the life cycle. That's the way that the world is going, and I think IFS have done a pretty good job in reflecting that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things have gone into a subscription based, like, seem to be paying for endless subscriptions, in my personal life and like everywhere else. But if you think about it, like, I guess companies don't just produce things now, they look after them when they break, right? And they've got the right expertise to look after them, and service and maintenance module is a way to track them. So yeah, and you're right. I think I've seen a lot of push from IFS for this, amongst others, AI, etc. But what's your current take on the service industry?
Yeah, I think it's growing. We've seen the buzzword maybe 2 or 3 years ago was servitization, and it touched on exactly what you just said there, which was we don't just build something, we build it, we look after it. If it breaks, we'll replace it. And you're absolutely right. We see that in the industries that IFS works in, but we see that at home now, right? How difficult did it used to be if something broke or if something didn't arrive? Whereas now, if I order something off Amazon and it arrives broken often, and I don't even need to send it back, they'll just send me a replacement, because I think that the market has tuned into people's expectations. People won't accept things just not working anymore. People don't like workarounds. People want, if something's broken, we have an SLA, this gets looked at within a day, it's fixed within a week. And I think that people are now willing to pay for that peace of mind, for that comfort, as opposed to maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago, where it was often a mend and make do attitude. And I think that's where the service industry has flourished, with that level of demand. And again, IFS has been part of that and helping companies service that.
Interesting. Why do you think some companies stick to the same processes they've had for years? I'm talking, for example, like, an Apps 9 customer that loosely used the service module, and obviously when they moved to cloud, it's changed, but they've tried to keep it the same. Why do you think this kind of situation happens?
I think there's a lot of reasons. I think one is comfort. Often if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And often as humans, we will often go with what's comfortable rather than we know what's right. I think sometimes it's knowledge as well. Within IFS, there were absolutely huge strides forward in service between apps 9 and apps 10. There was the concepts of work tasks brought in, which allowed a lot of differentiation of work and resources and scheduling. And then from apps 10 to cloud, it's huge in terms of the improvements. And I think not everybody knows that. And they may have built their processes around that apps 9 functionality and then uplifted that because, again, it works without realizing that, yes, it works, but it might not necessarily be optimized. And time is a finite resource, right? If we've got something that works, we might not necessarily look for ways to make it better because we've only got so many hours in a day. Yeah, absolutely. I think to address your first point, change is scary, right? But it doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. Absolutely seen it with a previous customer of mine where they fully reevaluated their service processes between a pre-apps 9 version going through to IFS Cloud. And they saw the benefit of that because a lot of the workarounds that they put in for apps 9 were now handled within the standard functionality. And that was a lot to do with scheduling, which, as you can imagine, can reap really good benefits because if you can get an extra 0.1 job a day out of 100 engineers, 1,000 engineers, the efficiency start to gain quite quickly on that, right? So I'm not saying always change, but I would always say investigate that, understand what the as is in the older versions and the to be, and what is possible in the new versions, and understand where your business differentiates, right? So if you're a business that's it's they're servicing and the engineers are doing 9, 10, 12 jobs a day, there's real scope for improvement right there if you're going from apps 9 to IFS Cloud. So if you're somebody that has a job that lasts 3, 4, 5 days, weeks, months, then maybe that's a different use case. So being really clear on your use cases, where you'd like to improve, and what IFS Cloud offers as standard when compared to the older product, that if you understand that internally, a good consultant can guide you on where those changes should be and how much effort you should put in to those re-implementation changes.
Yeah, I guess it's a big beast. Do you normally tackle them, as a per team, or do you find like you have to do separate ones, like separate tiny changes for different teams within the company that you've ever done implementations for? Like, what's the level of complexity we're talking about here?
Yeah, but both ways in terms of using maybe a smaller team or a very advanced team as a proof of concept before then rolling that out to the large business. I personally prefer that iterative approach because we can plan and we can workshop and we can think of every scenario in the classroom, but ultimately the lessons are learned in the field. So if you've got a small subset of engineers that you trust, that are really good, that are open to adapting new processes and technology, I would always trial it first in a hypercare environment where you can say, look, we're going to try this. It may help you be more efficient, less time filling in timesheets or work cards or whatever the terminology is within your business, and they'll typically be open to that.
Mhm.
And yeah, you'll learn things along the way. For instance, we'll probably talk a little bit later about mobile work order. One of the greatest efficiencies you can have within IFS, moving away from either paper worksheets and then typing things back in the back office. I've seen customers in the past that at the end of the day, the field service engineers puts a stack of papers on the desk, and it's somebody's job to type all those into IFS. All of that effort is eliminated if you use mobile work order, and you can issue parts, you can issue time, you can take pictures, you can do all sorts of fun stuff and efficient stuff in real time and eliminate all of that unnecessary admin. Now, that's all well and good, but what if you're operating in an environment where you're not allowed to take a tablet in, which a lot of our customers are? If it's a secure site, if it's a site that perhaps is in defence or within some other industries, they don't allow electronic devices. So that's where you really need to get into that granular detail and understand this mobile stuff's great, but it's only good if we can bring a device on site.
No, there's a lot of complexities. I almost feel like, within like an implementation, sometimes you are being given the magic wand, and you have that business partner that will be able to implement some of the changes you requested. And if everybody just, presented you with all the software and all the right like information like upfront, like, hey, these are all the systems we're using for our service business. And I think it's amazing, and I don't think you should touch it. And then you kind of botch IFS to kind of dance around that system. And I suppose that's
Yeah.
where the most maintenance comes in, right? I don't know if I'm making you laugh here, but I'm assuming this is something you've encountered, previously.
Yeah.
It's tough because, we know where we want to get to, and we know what an efficient implementation looks like. However, the actual doing of it, have you ever had it where it's been dragged on, and have you ever had it where it's been really smooth because they've just followed what you said? Like, I mean, talk to me. Like, you don't have to name the customer, but have you ever had experiences of it? Like,
Oh, absolutely, both ways. I think that typically when it goes smooth, let's start with the good first. Is when you've got that real deep understanding between the consultant and the company.
mhm.
So you understand exactly what those core needs are. You understand exactly what IFS does, and then you work together to bridge the gap.
Mhm.
And that's where the way you do that is through open communication, through strong collaboration, and also from compromises on both sides. There's certain times that it's right to configure IFS. There's certain times it's right to slightly tweak the business process, and having those sometimes difficult discussions and coming to an agreement. That's the key bit. Where I've seen this done not so well
Mhm.
is when people are trying to replicate an old system. I've seen people spend lots of time and money changing the terminology within IFS from work order to works order, because that was the terminology they used in the old system. So, there's an argument there where I would probably say, can we adapt our terminology rather than spend hours and lots of money discussing that and then implementing what is effectively one letter on a lot of screens.
Hey, I was just gonna make a post about this, but of course, I wanted to break my silence with your interview instead. But I was gonna go and say like, crims are something like a double-edged sword, really. They're really good at the time of implementing, and if you have the staff to maintain it, right?
Yeah.
As your business evolves, as your team evolves, and as cloud evolves, sometimes those crims will clash with what's on standard. And I actually believe now, with my heart of hearts, it's actually more difficult to maintain them going forward, um, because of the pace cloud is changing. You're gonna have to think about these, and I know I keep saying I'm gonna say evergreen, but there is a truth to that, because it's, yes, you can tailor it to no end, but you go, if you don't think about the maintenance costs, you are gonna struggle, in my opinion. So
Yeah, absolutely. And again, different for every business. I think
some businesses have teams to maintain these, right? Yeah.
absolutely. And there's a lot of really good partners that offer to maintain crims and all that kind of stuff. So the services are out there, but I think it can be quite tempting within the implementation process to have a crim as an easy answer to avoid a difficult discussion. So, oh, let's crim that. Let's automate that. Let's change the name of that. Let's add an additional screen. But as you said, that becomes increasingly difficult to maintain.
Mhm.
With each service update now from IFS, we're getting additional projections, additional screens, additional functionality. As you said, all that has to be maintained, tested, and rolled out. So anywhere where we can use the standard IFS, which in service is really good, then yeah, absolutely would advise to do so.
Let's go to the money question, which is, what's the most common pitfalls on service implementation you've seen?
Yeah. I wish I had a really sexy answer for you, Rob, but we've already touched on a lot of these. I think ultimately it comes down to strong fundamentals of um, understanding what you want to achieve. Where are the benefits? And now in service that lies within your customer. So is it within how many jobs you're going to do a day? Is it with sticking to SLAs? Is it compliance? Is it reducing downtime? Whatever your goal is, I would always say start with that in mind and have that clear goal, and make sure that everything you're doing is working towards that goal.
Mhm.
So that would be on the strategic level
Mhm.
of what you should do. And as we're talking pitfalls, what often happens is that focus is lost. We're trying to do a bit of this and a bit of that, and it becomes quite difficult. On a more fundamental level, so take that away from the executive strategic level. On a more fundamental level, what's really, really key in service to achieve those goals? If you want more jobs in a day across a large geographical area, your data needs to be on point. So you need to know the exact addresses, you need to know the exact type of equipment that you'll be servicing, you need to know the skills that your engineers have, and you need to know exactly how many engineers you've got in order to service that equipment over whatever geographical location or locations that you want to. So strategic level, as we said, make sure you know what the goals are. On a more operational level, make sure that your data is correct. The next level, which again is on that operational level, is make sure that you bring the engineers on the journey with you. The key pitfall is when the engineers feel that they've not necessarily been listened to, that this change in system is being done to them rather than with them. So that's where your change management is really important. Make sure that you've had input from those service engineers, because ultimately they're the ones that are on the front line. They know what needs to be done. They know what might not be as high a priority. So get that input, and then ultimately at the point of go live and before go live, make sure you have a strong training and support plan in place. So make sure all engineers have strong training materials, whether that be online or in person, and then a strong support network for if there are any clarifications that they need post go live. Again, mobile work order is very intuitive. We have buttons that say start your travel. So when an engineer starts travel, it will start capturing their travel time. When they arrive on site, we can hit we've arrived on site. When they actually begin work, which might be after a health and safety briefing, or there might be a large walk between getting on site and where the actual fix is. When they start work, they can hit start work, and when they finish work, they hit finish work. But
those are loggable time, right? For
absolutely, and all that can be captured. Which is often important for SLA purposes, sometimes for billing purposes. But that's great data as well, right? If you're looking as a business at what we can do better, if we can reduce travel time, if we can increase uptime, increase first-time fixes, that's all stuff that we can capture in real time. So, and part of that is making sure that you've got a strong, confident engineering workforce that is capable and well supported on the tool.
On an ideal world, on a service implementation, you'd be given all the resources, all the willing staff to be able to take this all on board and fully test this out. Have you ever found it as a service and maintenance consultant that you've had to play many roles or you're stretched in a way that because it touches upon probably one of the most important parts of that business, like anything that you do, anything you introduce could save money, and time, which means money for the business. So I definitely think it's important. But I guess where I'm getting to is if you had 3 things on a project that would make things go well on your wish list, what would they be?
Yeah, I think we've touched on these, but I think good data, good people, and by that I mean the people that are on the implementation, taking decisions, supporting the end users, and then the final one, which is the most important one, is good planning. As well. If that data's correct, the people are correct, and the project's planned well, that is the magic wand. And they're all things that are within our control as well, right? We can do the diligence ahead of the project and in the early stages of the project to make sure that data's correct. We can ensure that the people both within the IFS delivery project and the end workforce feel supported and feel empowered to be able to do their job. And we can have strong leadership and project management to make sure that those people are put into a way that uses their skills and their time in the best way. So I think they're the 3. And again, they're all controllable, right? And things happen. Things go wrong. People move on, and data can get lost, corrupted, not maintained over time. But if you can bring those 3 things back on track, then you're in a pretty good place.
So how do you justify a re-implementation or optimization post-update? Because like I said, once you've gone in, you've done your implementation, because I've been in these, right? Like I've done CRM implementations myself. Once processes are set, they're set, and then they'll be set for years, right? How would you go even trying to get the budget to do this? where do you even start? Like, what, in your opinion, why is it important? No, like everybody, obviously, all the consultants will go, yes, do the whole thing, revamp the whole thing, like, take it all apart because, we want, we need to look at stuff like that. But when do you think it's time? What are the telltale signs that you need to do it, and how do you even justify it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the ultimate best practice is to have some level of continuous improvement always. So consistently monitoring what we could be doing better. And I think
So
that's
you think there's a good CI culture? Is that what you mean within the business
yeah,
already? Okay.
yeah, absolutely. And having a dedicated IFS continuous improvement team that can look at those areas as we touched at earlier of, okay, what are our goals? What does IFS already support to do that? What level of time and cost would that take to take us from where we are to where we want to be? And sometimes that's a really obvious obvious cost saving. I'll tell you a story. It's a very, very random thing that happened to me. I was on a plane going to America,
Mhm.
and I was sat next to a lovely chap. I won't name him because he hasn't given me permission, but maybe he will afterwards.
Sure.
And by absolute chance, this chap had implemented IFS,
Mhm. No
and
way. Well, you sat next to a random stranger in the plane.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and he'd implemented IFS Service of all things,
No way.
and yeah,
That wasn't me, by the way.
um,
We weren't on the plane together.
no, 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 and he'd utilised a lot of the PSO elements of planning and scheduling optimization, and the core goal of that is to really optimize how we schedule engineers. So you might be getting additional jobs per day, less travel time. That's the real goal with PSO. And this gentleman told me that he'd saved the cost of implementing PSO twice over just with the fuel that had been saved.
No way.
So that's a really, really obvious return on investment. Not all of them are going to be that obvious, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's where you look at if you're a business that is structured in a way that you've got a continuous improvement team, not all can, then you can look at that level of analysis using the data that you've got alongside whichever IFS partner you choose or independent consultant that you choose and say, look, this is what we're doing well. This is where we would like to get to. Can IFS support that? And you know what? A good consultant will sometimes just say, no, no, it won't. And maybe spend your time looking at something else that could save you time, money, cost.
Mhm.
So I think that's the key point is understanding where those efficiencies are, find someone who knows IFS Cloud really well
Mhm.
and see if it can support it already or what the effort is to get there because the juice has to be worth the squeeze, right?
Mhm.
So if you're going to spend £10,000 to save 9,800, might be worth it. Probably not. There's probably better efficiencies elsewhere. So yeah, having that strong business analysis, strong system analysis, and working through where and how to do those optimizations.
Do you have these discussions all throughout? I guess when you before you start a project, and I suppose you have it all the time. How else?
Yeah, every day, and it. There's certain things as well. That's where we touched earlier on strong management and project management, and after that, strong continuous improvement is understanding priorities
Mhm.
and saying, okay, we've got a limited amount of time, a limited amount of resource, a limited amount of money. How do we best? How do we make the most out of that to have the best outcome for the business?
Have you ever had it where you've gone and you're getting to know the business, and then you've done a pivot because you found that it wasn't where you thought it was, or the business didn't think that's where it was, and then they found a new thing that they could do. Does that happen to you? Like you're in between, in the middle of the project, and you're like, okay, there is this massive thing that we've just seen because of the update to cloud.
Yeah, and it maybe yes and no. So I think there's certainly been times where we've had to park certain elements of functionality because the business just wasn't mature enough on, as we said earlier, data is a key thing. So there's times we've had to park additional functionality because the business just wasn't ready, didn't have customer data, for instance,
Okay.
and therefore, if we didn't have the exact locations of where the assets were to be fixed in terms of geographical locations, we then couldn't implement PSO, for instance, because that needs that geo data
Right.
in order to optimize. So what we did with that customer is we said, you go away, speak to your customers and see if they're willing to give that geo data. Because often assets aren't necessarily at an address. Let's say, let's use a wind farm as an example. A wind farm may have one address, but you have dozens and dozens and dozens of wind turbines, and they're all located in different places at this one address. And there could be a 20-minute, half an hour, sometimes even longer drive.
Crazy.
Less so if you're walking or other means between each of the assets. So we need to consider that if we don't have that data, we can't use the optimizations that are built on top of having that data.
Wow, that's a lot of good considerations. That's a good discussion to have. So, I guess what you're saying is, part of your role, a lot of the improvements are done offline, right? Not in IFS.
I'd say pre-IFS, those improvements are done in understanding exactly where your current situation is. Because IFS does a lot of awesome things, but you may not be ready for them. I play a lot of football, right? Somebody could come to me and go, Cristiano Ronaldo does this. I'm not ready to do what Cristiano Ronaldo does. There's a lot of things I would need to put in place first before I can do Cristiano Ronaldo step overs.
Could play as well. I don't think anybody is ready for Cristiano Ronaldo than Cristiano Ronaldo. But I get your point. Hey, I was gonna say actually, like, is there anything like, what's your favorite moments? Like, let's say where you've given a customer a light bulb moment and makes you love what you do. Because I don't want to just focus on negatives, but of course,
yeah,
one of your favorites.
Yeah, there's so many cool things, and one for instance, and we touched on it a little bit earlier. There was somebody I used to work with, and their job at the end of each day was taking these paper worksheets and typing them into the system, and we gave them mobile work order, and that person's job just got so much easier because instead of taking these paper worksheets, they couldn't read the handwriting sometimes. Sometimes these worksheets were wet because it had been outside. And then almost overnight, or exactly overnight, we gave them mobile work order, and instead this person already had the data in the system. All they had to do was check, make sure that everything was correct, because I'm sure there's some field engineers out there that will shout at me for this, but they're not always known for the best spelling. So this person still had to maybe check some spelling, make sure that everything's okay. And then they would then raise the invoices for that service work all in one screen on the system, as opposed to taking these worksheets, often ringing people to make sure everything's correct. losing half of them because they were wet or lost or left in the van, and then suddenly it was all there, and this person was so happy.
I need you to come back on the second episode and show me mobile work order. I think it needs to be done. At least give me a flavor of it. I'm hoping you'll be down. Okay, so yeah, no, I think, is there anything else? Like, I was actually hoping to see, like, I think you've prepared something for us. Like, you've going to show us a little something, a little flavor of IFS service maintenance, right? So if you are ready.
Yeah. I mean, I want to talk you through the history. I've been doing this for 10 years now, and I think it's really important sometimes, because it's really important to see how far we've come. And if I'll take the screen if that's okay. History of IFS service and maintenance. When I came to IFS as a product, they were very much one and the same. As we said, different use cases. Maintenance was very much often in a factory and fixing machines so that they could produce more output, more uptime, and the main constraints were often when those machines were being utilized within production, and really making sure that manufacturing output is optimized as best as possible. There were also an element of service functionality, i.e., and when I say service, I mean customer-led service, so fixing something and then getting paid for it, as opposed to maintaining your own assets. However, it often looked and felt the same, and certainly when I came in, I think some of the old IFSers will recognise this. I think this was pre-Apps 9, and this was what the screen looked and felt like. And you can see it's that kind of industrial manufacturing old feel. But then over the years, for people that are still on those older versions of IFS, there was the bridge, and this is Apps 9, Apps 10, where we started to get a lot more visually pleasing information. So you had the lobbies over on the left-hand side. We've got the equipment object navigator, a way to review all of your assets, and then you've got key data. How many work orders do you have on each of those assets? Create fault reports. How much preventative maintenance do you have on each of those assets? And then, of course, mobile work order over on the right-hand side. You can see some of the things you can do on there. You review your objects. You can look at stock, POs if you need to, and generate new work, whatever you need to do. But this was the kind of middle ground, I guess, as we saw that evolution of IFS from what was effectively a maintenance product and moving more and more into those different maintenance and service user cases. And as we look into cloud now, you can see the information that is on offer, and there's more and more. You can look at the exact diagrams that can be attached to equipment. We can upload service books. We can upload manufacturer's instructions. Over on the left-hand side, you can build really complex asset structures that meets any of the global standards. You can link into procurement. So you've got to remember that some of the huge benefits for people that aren't as familiar with IFS is that you can link that. You can link your procurement to your service, to your manufacturing, and all of that is in these inbuilt lobbies in cloud, which I think is one of the biggest benefits from cloud, is that you have a number of pre-built lobbies that really drive your workflow. Previously, often you had to configure your own, and that took up a lot of time, effort, budget, technical resource in order to do that. One of the cool ones that I really like here is the GIS map. We spoke earlier about how we wanted that view of exactly where our assets were in relation to geography, and this is in a service world. And as you can imagine, on that previous green slide, you couldn't even imagine how you would get here from those older versions of IFS. As you see, you look at the inventory that's held within your warehouses. We've got the ability to build remote warehouses in IFS. So if you keep van stock as an engineer, that's all automatically held within IFS. You can issue that directly to a work order out of your van, utilize scanning to do so, barcode scanning. There's so much you can do now. And as you can see there, multiple devices now. On the old versions, apps 9 and earlier, it had to be on a Windows PC. There was some element of mobile work order. But now, whether you've got a tablet, a PC, a Mac, a barcode scanner, you can run IFS Cloud off them all. So I just wanted to give a visual representation of how far we've come. And for people that aren't as familiar with IFS Cloud, I've not even touched on what's available. So hopefully that whets the appetite. Hopefully that gets you thinking. Again, to summarize on what we said earlier, think about what your strategic direction is. What are you looking to achieve from a service perspective? Is it compliance? Is it more jobs per day? Is it more first-time fixes? And then understand where you're at currently and what your data is currently telling you. What data is it possible for you to collect? And then speak to whoever the IFS expert is and say, right, this is where we want to go. This is what we've got. What does IFS Cloud currently provide? And what will it take for us to get there? And there you go. I think hopefully that's enough, Rob. Does that give you enough to have a few ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I think that was great. Thank you for that. I feel like we've sort of run out of time. I don't know how that's possible. I told you this will go really fast. So no, I completely enjoyed it. For the last part, I actually want to give the floor to you. Is there anything you'd like to say? You could open up any topic out there.
It's a good question. You put me on the spot, Rob. No, I think just if you are working with service and with IFS, my socials are open. I'm happy to answer any questions. Rob, you and I speak all the time, often about little queries. So, if you've got any questions on best practice, hints, tips, then please feel free to reach out. But again, just try that. I think the most important thing to get this across to people is those strong fundamentals when it comes to data, people, planning. Do that well, and you'll make sure that you're in a good place.
Appreciate that, and I know I didn't prep you for that question, so I probably took you aback. It just came to me as well. I would say thank you so much for coming on. I think we've scratched the surface, to be honest. So I'm hoping there's going to be more. I'm very, very keen to learn more about this topic. There's a whole world out there that we could explore, and to be fair, just make people more interested in the topic, right? So I certainly am, and I'm hoping people in my company will be able to watch it and they'll be having a look and be like, I know there's lots and lots of things that folks like myself want to do, but it's what we could do, right? And how we're going to tackle it. It's almost like, before you go into doing something, we have to be purposeful, like you said. So no, thanks for taking some of the time today. And I'm hoping for you to come back and talk more about the different products on hand and maybe different situations on hand that we could discuss. So Kieran.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure, Rob.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Find Kieran on socials. And yeah, thank you guys. And if you enjoy this, click the like, subscribe, and and share it out. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.